Meeting is being recorded.
I'd like to call the regular meeting of August 9th, 2021 to order. I'd like everybody to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Right hand over your heart. Repeat after me. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the secretary please call roll?
Commissioner Alderete.
Here.
Commissioner Calderon.
Present.
Commissioner McLaughlin.
Here.
Commissioner Ramos.
Present.
Commissioner Wu.
Here.
Chair Morrissey.
Here.
Vice Chair Pham. For the record, he will be joining us in a few minutes. Chair, you do have quorum.
Thank you. Members of the public may attend planning commission meetings in person or virtually via Zoom. I now invite the commission secretary to describe the way the public can access and participate in this meeting.
Thank you, Chair. Members, this meeting is being live streamed via our portal at www.santa-ana.primegov.com/public/portal and to YouTube at youtube.com/City of Santa Ana videos. If you would like to provide a public comment, you may do so in one of the following ways. Join the meeting via Zoom, enter meeting ID 991-178-63700. When the item that you would like to comment on is being discussed, select the hand icon to let us know that you would like to speak. You will be called upon by the name you entered. You can also call 1-669-900-9128, enter meeting ID 991-178-63700. When the item that you would like to comment on is being discussed, press *9 to let us know that you would like to speak. You will be called upon by the last 3 digits of your phone number. After you are called upon, you must press *6 to unmute yourself. For those who are attending this meeting in person and would like to provide a public comment, please fill out a request to speak form and turn it in to this front desk. All speakers will have 3 minutes to speak. I will alert you when your time is up. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Moving on to public comments on non-agenda items. Secretary, does anyone wish to speak on non-agenda items?
We do not have any request to speak forms. If there is anyone that is calling in that would like to comment on a non-agenda item, please either select the hand icon or press *9 now. We'll wait a few seconds. We do not have any callers.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Moving on to consent calendar. Is there a motion to approve items A through B, excused absences, and minutes from June 28th?
Motion to approve.
Second. Thank you, Secretary. Most call for roll call vote.
Yes, I have a motion by Commissioner McLaughlin, a second by Commissioner Wu. We'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Alderete.
Yes.
Commissioner Calderon.
Aye.
Commissioner McLaughlin.
Aye.
Commissioner Ramos.
Aye.
Commissioner Wu.
Yes.
Vice Chair Pham.
Aye.
Chair Morrissey.
Aye.
Motion passes by unanimous consent.
Okay, we'll move on to the business calendar. I'll now go through the public hearing protocols and review the process for public hearings so that everyone knows what to expect. Staff will provide a presentation and answer questions from the commission. The public hearing will be open. The applicant will be given the opportunity to speak, limited to 15 minutes. Members of the public will be given the opportunity to comment, limited to 3 minutes. The applicant will be given the opportunity to respond to comments made by the public, limited to 5 minutes. The public hearing will be closed. Discussion will return to the commission with formal action taken to approve, conditionally approve, deny, or continue review of the application. Please consider the following suggestions in organizing your comments. Please state your name and address, strictly voluntary. State whether you support, oppose, or are neutral to the proposal. Your statement should include all pertinent facts within your knowledge. Avoid gossip, emotion, and repetition. A clear, concise, and non-repetitive argument is most effective. So this is the time and place for the public hearing on item number 1, conditional use permit number 2021-10 for the property located at 309 West Church Street. Please note, decision on this matter is final unless appealed within 10 days by any interested individual or party. Before we begin, do any commissioners have anything they wish to disclose with regards to this item? Any commissioners starting with?
Sure. No, I have nothing to disclose. Nothing to disclose. Nothing to disclose.
Yes. Commissioner Wu, I am going to have to recuse myself because the business has been 500 feet my business. So I will hand this item over to Vice Chair. Commissioner Pat. Mary, can you start?
All right, ready? Oh, am I good up here? Thank you, Vice Chairman, members of the commission. Before you this evening, is an application for a conditional use permit ABC license upgrade for a Type 47. The applicant is representing a Limpio beer and cerveza and botanas. It's located at 309 West 3rd Street. As I mentioned, this is an upgrade to an existing 41 ABC license. The location also has an approved after-hours CUP from 2015. And I'll go through the presentation, but as recommended by staff, we are recommending an adoption of the resolution to approve conditional use permit 2021-10 as conditioned. As mentioned, this business is located in our downtown SDA 4 specific development, and it's specific to the subzone downtown of that document. More than anything, it's located in a commercial location, both to the north, east, west, and there is some residential to the south near the Artist Village. The lot size is about 1/4 of an acre, and the location actually provides indoor and outdoor patron space for consumption of food and beverages. This is a site photo of the location. As mentioned, and you've probably all seen with COVID-19, some of the opportunities that these businesses have provided. So for outdoor activities and consumption. So you'll see one of these sort of parklets located right in front of the business. So, excuse me. So a little bit about the business background. The restaurant does occupy about 1,800 square feet of tenant space and has been in operation since 2017 when the current business tenant, when the current business tenant occupied the space after taking over an existing restaurant that originally entitled the tenant space there. Beer and wine, as mentioned, Type 41, and also a after-hours CUP, as I mentioned, 2015. The hours of operation approved through the CUP are 8 to 2 daily, but as mentioned in the resolution, there are some limitations on outdoor activities to limit any potential negative impacts to the area. To the left, you'll see a site plan of the tenant space, and it also includes a small patio area to the front. It does not include the parklet, as that is something that is recent. And then to the right, you'll see the, can I move this over, Sarah, this one?
Yes.
Okay. And to the right, you'll see the floor plan. In the red outlines, you'll see the storage and display area for alcohol. None of that is being changed as they already have an approved CUP for alcohol sales. All right. So as I mentioned, this is an upgrade to an existing 41 license. There's no change in that besides the inclusion of distilled spirits. The alcohol storage and display area is not being changed in any way. They are continuing with that same maximum 5% of the gross floor area. It's not located in proximity to any single family residential, schools, or places of worship as required by code. And then the police department has reviewed the application and is satisfied with the operational standards as well as the conditions of approval that are imposed this evening on this application. And then additionally to the conditions of approval, there is a property maintenance agreement and the standards within the code that will address any potential negative impacts. As part of our application process, the CEQA finding is a class 1, it's an existing facility, so there will be an environmental document filed with this application, and there are no physical impacts associated with this project. And with that, staff concludes presentation and recommends adoption of a resolution approving conditional use permit 2021-10 as conditioned. I am available for any questions as well as the applicant behind me.
Does the commission have any questions? Chairman Bell? I have a question. You're open at the restaurant is open till 2, right? At what point did they ask for last call on distilled spirits?
I think I would defer that to the applicant. He might be able to answer that better than I can.
And I do have concern that it's a very nice restaurant and gathering place. The concern is that as you get later in the hour, there's another place that's open till 2 within walking distance. And they serve distilled spirits as well. So I'm just the impact of 2 places that's open to with stronger stuff than we got here. And I hope I'm not just assuming that there might be a difference.
No, yeah, you're correct. Part of the review process for us is to understand the location of this request, and we understand that it's in the downtown. So part of our recommendation to approve is knowing that the downtown is the most active of all areas within the city. So we realize that the cluster of ABC licenses is higher than any other location, but we still acknowledge that and recommend the approval. Obviously, this is going before you for any consideration.
Was there any condition placed on the distribution of the distilled alcohol up to a certain time?
There was no condition added to the resolution, but this again is before you if you wish to make any.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Order.
Yes, thank you. So I'm following a little bit of this is following up on Commissioner Wu's comment. So it's open until 2 a.m. There was live entertainment approved in 2021.
Yes.
Okay, so how many calls for service there have been? Not just in we'll say in 2021, 2020.
So based on the conversation with the police department, there was about 20 calls for service in that area with only 1 incident related to the location. Half of them were split between the 2020 and then the other half were within 2021 till now. But the incident was related to some sort of noise complaint. And then with the review process, obviously, Bill McGovern mentioned that he is aware that everything's been outdoors. So depending on the calls for service and the type of incidents, he says it's just something that happens based on the activities that are before us.
Okay, so was condition 11, I saw that in the CUP, requiring private security between 10 and 12 during the week and then 9 to 2 a.m. Is that currently in force or is that a new condition?
That is a new condition based on the incidents and the reports from the police.
Okay, all right, that's my questions. Thanks.
Sure. I just want to have a question. What's the capacity of this establishment?
Let me go back to that section.
Sure. I didn't see it in the presentation, that's why I saw.
Yeah, it was. So there is approximately a space to accommodate 17 patrons within the dining and 32 within the enclosed patio. That doesn't include the parking.
So repeat those numbers: 17 inside and how many outside?
32.
And this is all day till 2 a.m.
Yeah, with the exception of outdoor activities to cease at midnight. There's a condition there as well.
What's the capacity after that?
17.
17. That's really interesting to hear. I've gone to this establishment many times, and there's more than that, So that does bring a lot of concern. I'm a local. I've been going downtown for many years. Actually, just went recently, and actually had to step back because of the capacity of how many people were there. So that does bring a lot of concern to me, and yeah, it's just interesting. I wish, we could have seen that in the presentation. I have pictures as well of how busy it gets. Yeah, it's just it's concerning. That's all I gotta say. And so I'm hoping that there can be some more regulation when it comes to people that are going inside. The moment you walk in there after 9, 10, 1 a.m., it's humid in there. It's so sticky. It's disgusting of how many people are inside. You can't even get alcohol, right? So yeah, I wish, there was some transparency with that, coming in here. That's all I gotta say. So.
And if I can add to that, based on the occupancy that we determine is based on the layout and the tables and the chairs that are shown on the floor plan. So it's not based on a building occupancy maximum, it's just based on the review and the plans that are provided. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Ramos?
Thank you. At this time, questions are to be directed at staff, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. I have a question for staff. One is, did staff have a chance to stop by the establishment to see what their current sales, service, and consumption of alcoholic beverages is? And if so, how many visits were made and during what days and at what times? And what was observed? Thank you.
Commissioner, to make sure I received that question clearly, are you asking whether staff has visited the establishment?
Yes, so I would like to know if staff had the opportunity to visit the establishment ahead of this meeting. If staff did, when did staff go? Specifically, what day of the week and at what time? And what did staff observe while there in regards to the sales, service, and consumption of alcoholic beverages?
So I can only answer for myself, but I did visit the site when I was requested, or the date to make the posting. When I did arrive at the site, the establishment was closed. I don't know the reason why, but it was around 2 p.m. And that was 10 days prior to the meeting date.
Thank you. So I'm wondering if any staff member present tonight or any staff member that helped prepare the staff report was able to visit the establishment in their capacity as city staff and enter it during business hours.
No.
Commissioner Ramos, this is Ali. I can say that I personally visited the site about a year, maybe 2 years ago before the pandemic got very bad, but I can't say that recently, other than I didn't visit anyone, has visited the site to patronize it.
Thank you, Ali. And I'm wondering if this is typical, or if staff would make, I'm wondering if for other similar items that we considered, if staff has made an effort, and well, I hear that staff did make an effort, but if staff has ensured that they were able to visit the establishment during open business hours to see what's currently being sold or not sold.
Thank you, Commissioner Ramos. It is common for staff when a project is assigned to them to visit the site. At a minimum, to do the site posting and also to investigate the site to make sure that it's compliant with current codes from a code enforcement perspective and also just general site maintenance perspectives. But in terms of taking it a step further and actually like being a customer of the business or patronizing it, I can't say that that's part of our standard practice.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Ali. And I'm just a little concerned that when staff did go, the establishment was closed, so staff isn't able to report on just what they saw in regards to compliance. And as of now, those are all my questions for staff. I may have questions for the applicant when we get there. Thank you.
Commissioner Ramos, Commissioner Blanco.
I'm going to go off on some of the things Miguel spoke about. You know, looking at it from an outdoor indoor situation, I remember the fact that there was an alleyway on the one side that was considered outdoor, right?
Right, that is
There's a
a
location, there's an area in the back of the building, which is definitely considered outdoor. And then you've got the front of the building now, that's outdoor.
Right, so the back alley area, that's not part of the, I did walk over to the alley to make sure if there was anything back there, but I didn't see any tables or anything that would represent an activity out there for the establishment. But
But
this,
is that going to be, I mean,
No.
in previous restaurants, in the previous ownership, that outdoor area was used more than sometimes the indoor area. And I mean, I go on what Miguel said, I mean, 17 indoor people, that's not a heck of a lot of people, all things considered. And even size of that restaurant, which it was back a couple of years ago, I would think there'd be more on the inside. I understand there's probably CDC type things that are being considered at this point in time, but it's gotta be a different set of numbers there with respect to who's going to be outdoors, who's going to be on the side of the building, who's going to be back of the building, who's going to be indoor. I'm not sure. I mean, I agree with Miguel. I'm not sure I agree with the numbers that are being posted.
right, as far as the plans that were provided for staff to review and the site visit indicated that it's basically the side area, that patio area, and the indoor, and obviously the parklet that was installed at the front, but that's only a temporary thing.
I guess I stayed the same thing. Miguel, I'm a little concerned on the numbers. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, it's a great location. It's a great place. You know, previous ownership that's been there, you know, they did a great job with whatever they were offering at that point in time. But I mean, again, Miguel's right. I mean, it was shoulder to shoulder a lot of times in that restaurant. And shoulder to shoulder is not 17 people.
If I could just add, it's nearly impossible to, the moment you enter the bar to get to the outside patio, it's a mission to get to the other side. I have a video that I can share with everybody so they can see how it is, you know, it's impossible. To get drinks, it's impossible. To go to the restroom, it's impossible. The moment you get outside, you'll be surprised at how many people are like this. It's ridiculous. You know, and then of course, you know, I understand when you go to the back, you make a right, there's a staircase, and then there's that alleyway, and then there's that exit gate to the outside. There are some tables there, yeah, and it's there are being occupied, but it's still ridiculously impacted.
Well, it's tacos and beer and wine, right?
It was, but it was another kind of restaurant. It had a full menu.
Well, the Argentine restaurant is
Before
gone,
the-
now it's tacos and beer, and most of the patrons don't sit. I mean, I sit, but also passing a deadline on that. I was wondering, the front part, are they going to serve spirit there as people walk by because it's a sidewalk adjacent to it?
Right, I'm not actually familiar with what the regulations are for the parklets. My understanding it was just for food, but I don't know exactly what CDA maybe mentioned on those, or even the state.
I have no problem with the outside patio and that seems appropriate because it's gated. But I am concerned that we can serve the still with or any alcohol to be on the sidewalk there pass by. And there's a lot of youth that hang out there.
I would imagine that it doesn't meet the ABC requirements for a gated area, so no alcohol would be served in that parklet.
But I would agree with Commissioner McCollum, it does get hot sweaty and it's crowded, which is why certain people go in there.
It's a great establishment, don't get me wrong, the music, the culture behind it, it's amazing. You know, it's right now we're living in a world, right, where social distancing, you know, all that stuff, you know, everybody's on alert, you know, and the moment you walk in there, it's like, what the hell is going on? You know, so that just wish there was like transparency and people were aware of what's going on. You know, moving forward, there could just be some regulation as far as like how many people could go inside. If there's additional security, you know, we have the other bars neighboring there, like Crew, Copper Door, Chapter One, and there are fights that happen out there, you know, so it's, you know, we have to take that into consideration. There are fights that happen. Some of them might not be reported, you know, but there are several confrontations that happen, you know, so it's just something that, you know, I hope everybody just is mindful of that. You know.
Commissioners, thank you. So just to help the conversation a little bit, when an applicant applies for these types of ABC applications, they do provide information about the business. They do provide us the number of individuals inside the dining room and outside on an application. I'm sure Ivan has reviewed that in addition to the plans. That's where we get the number 17 from. It's applicant provided. If there is a desire to take that into account tonight for one or, you know, in the future on any other applications, a condition of approval could be considered by the commission for a review. At least the city's control would be through the building official to evaluate the occupancy limits of the interior, have it perhaps posted. Many cities do that above the main entrance to a business. And then secondly, explore whether an external review by the Orange County Fire Authority is warranted. The OCFA is an external agency, so our ability to sort of condition them is a little bit limited. But it could be something that we could chat with them about. It's sort of like a friendly agency to agency consideration. But I just wanted to ensure that the commission is aware that even if that number 17 is not put in the PowerPoint presentation, it is still stated in the staff report and also given to us by the applicant on their application. That's where the number comes from.
I think the public safety concern during this big variation, we're just being cautious. Commissioner Cohen and I would hate to deny it, but I think that you could present something in the proposed plan, but the monitoring of it is something that we need to kind of look at in terms of occupancy, orientation, and all that. But I think that you know, restaurant owners, if they're responsible, they would take that into consideration that we have to express some concern. If not, then that's up for review.
Commissioner Cooper, I think we have comments there also. Because from the ownership, looking forward to see if they can answer some of the concerns that we brought up. Have we received any communication?
Yes, 2 letters of written communication were received. Those were distributed to the commission.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, Vice Chair and city staff, I have had my hand raised. I'm not sure what would be the best way for me to signal when I want to comment since I'm not able to be in person today.
Sure, go ahead, Commissioner Ramos.
Thank you. Sorry, before we move on to the public comment and to the applicant, I wanted to ask additional questions of staff. So first, when does the staff know when the kitchen currently closes at the establishment?
As far as the hours of operation, they are supposed to provide hot meals until the end of the hour that alcohol stops being served. That's part of the condition as well.
But as of now, do we know how the establishment is operating? In regards to when the kitchen closes?
Are you asking as far as when the kitchen closes versus the restaurant?
Or the restaurant, yeah. I'm just wondering if we know, like if somebody were to go this weekend, do we know when they stop serving hot foods?
Yeah, I think I would defer that to the applicant.
Okay, I can ask that to the applicant, when that time comes. And then another question is, is staff aware if, and if staff isn't aware, I can also ask this to the applicant when that time comes. But does this business owner own any other businesses in the downtown area? And do we know if they do, and if so, how they've if they have a liquor license, how they've managed that, and like other security concerns? I think that can be very unique to the downtown area.
Right. As far as the history of me knowing this property, this business owner, he has history in establishing other locations in the downtown. But as far as I know, I believe he's no longer part of that. I defer the question to him as far as specifics. But he does have some history with staff as far as proposing a business that sells alcohol and after hours. And that was approved, if I'm not mistaken, 2017 or so. Many hectares. 2016, I believe.
Okay, so Marisco's Liquor. Okay, thank you. And then, sorry, go ahead.
Was that it?
I'm sorry, I thought you were gonna ask something, but I do have one more question. So I also wanna understand the type of license that they're seeking tonight and what that would allow that is currently not allowed. So with their current license for beer and wine, are they able to have liquor on the premises, whether they're selling it or somebody else has brought it in?
They are not. It's not part of the approved substance or permitted substance, sorry, the distilled spirits.
Okay, and I raise that because in me going through their social media right now, there are pictures of what would appear to be liquor. I can't say for a fact that it is because I haven't visited the establishment in a very long time. But I just wanted to raise that. And if any other commissioners have visited more recently, I don't know if any of you have seen liquor at the establishment. But so just to be clear, as of now, the serving, sale, or even like alcohol, liquor, hard liquor being brought into the establishment, hard liquor such as tequila is not allowed?
Only beer and wine.
Okay, so anything, and are they selling any mixed drinks as of now?
I'll defer that to the,
Commissioner Ramos, I think a lot of questions might be better suited for the applicant to answer. Would you mind if we move forward and have applicant answer some of these questions?
No, of course not. I will direct these questions at the applicant, but I did want to understand if there is a alcohol content that is allowed with this current license, or that is not allowed with this current license, but that would be allowed with the license that they're seeking tonight.
so definitely, currently the business can only sell for on-premise consumption, beer and wine. Your application tonight, if the approval goes, will include beer, wine, and distilled spirits.
Okay, are there any spirits that can be sold under their current license as long as they don't exceed a certain percentage of alcohol?
Commissioner Ramos, this is Ali.
Ali.
Unfortunately, I have too much experience in this field, but I'll say that
Thank you.
brewed alcohol is something that is permitted under a type 41 license unless a jurisdiction conditions against brewed alcohol is alcohol that has 15% or less ABV, alcohol by volume. So that in some cases can be like sake tequila. That's common at like sushi restaurants that may offer, I don't want to use the word mocktails, but like lighter cocktails that even though the thought is a type 41 is mostly beer and wine, that through that 15% limit, they're able to meet the ABC's requirements to not be considered hard alcohol.
Thank you, Ali. I appreciate that. And those are all my questions for staff. Thank you.
I disagree with that. Commissioner Alvarez,
Yeah, I was really just following up on the question that Commissioner Ramos made, which seemed to me, I think she was saying, it looks like, based off of social media, that there's hard liquors, distilled spirits. And I think the follow-up question for me is, what is the process of any if an applicant comes to the commission having served distilled spirits or alcohol of any kind, but it doesn't have a CEP allowing it to do so? Is there a policy that we have when that, if that, I'm not saying that those facts are true, I'm just, this is hypothetical with the question.
If the perception turns out to be true that they may be selling hard alcohol without the proper licensure, then the commission has several options at its disposal. One would be a condition of approval, basically, or almost sort of like a directive to look at code enforcement options between now and when we sign the release for the ABC license. We can also work with state licensing staff, like their own inspectors, alert them. We have very close relationships with ABC staff to ask them to investigate or at least review. But ultimately, the goal, tonight's application is to allow that upgrade. So whether the commission wishes to take into consider, past behavior or not, ultimately the application before the commission tonight is to allow that sort of sale.
Thank you.
Commissioners, you're saying we have 2 public comments.
Yes, so we do have 2 written correspondence that were received. Those were distributed to the commission and also posted on our website.
Please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Oscar Olivares. I'm the owner of India Botanas de Cereza. This is my wife, Jessica. I'd like to address right away the concern about distilled spirits being sold. We've actually had an ABC investigation prompted maybe about a year and a half ago, because the same concern arose. Someone saw through social media that we were selling distilled spirits, and ABC came in, they did their inspection and found nothing, just basically just gave us some guidelines and making sure that, we follow them. But as far as their end, everything was as it should be. What prompted them is that at this point, the 41 has created a new market to create basically wine grade spirits. And that's what we use. It's basically, wine grade tequila, wine grade gin, wine grade vodka. And my bartenders, they come from experience, from a lot of experience working at different bars. So they were able to make great tasting cocktails with these wine grade spirits. So they're pretty spot on as far as the flavor and everything, and especially because our cocktails are flavored. It's just the flavor of the cocktail itself is more pronounced. So, sometimes people have a hard time distinguishing as well. But other than that, that's to answer to that question.
I would like to add, I know that Commissioner Ramos had a question as to whether we're affiliated with other restaurants in the downtown area. The answer would be yes, we were affiliated with Hector's on Broadway. That was opened in 2016. As of 2019, we're no longer legal owners. So we do have experience with type 47 alcohol licenses. There was also another hectares that we owned in Santa Ana, but not in the downtown area since 2014. So at this time, it would be our third alcohol license that we have experience. ABC does not take the selling of distilled spirits when you don't have a permit lightly. We are 100% aware of that. And I would just like to add that we just have really talented staff that makes the cocktails look like they have distilled spirits and even taste, but they're all wine grade. As Ali mentioned, it's like we're adding wine to something that looks like a cocktail. And as many of you guys will know, social media is exactly what gives us business, so it will look like it. And it won't look any different if you guys approve the permit.
Commissioner, since you have other questions previously, we'd like to start in comments.
Thank you. First off, I want to thank the applicant by addressing those questions directly. And I think one of the questions that I had that still hasn't been answered is, as of now, until what time are you serving hot foods?
So our kitchen is open the entire time that we're operating. We do have last call about like 1 a.m., which is roughly around the time we start to close the kitchen. Because of the nature of the downtown area, as you guys can imagine, there's a lot of activity. So our kitchen is open, so as long as anyone orders anything, our patrons ordering food at all hours of the night, no, but it is open. It is one of the conditions of ABC as well.
Okay, thank you. And that I asked that because I wanted to see how easy it would be to abide by that condition. And those are all the questions that I have as of now for that.
Commissioner Oliver.
No, I'm good. Thank you very much.
I have no questions.
Just going back to the numbers that were thrown out earlier with regards to inside and outside. Those numbers are generated by you?
The capacity was placed by planning, but in regards to the concern, before we would have staff as or staff that we hired that have guard cards. They were the ones basically IDing, checking for anything at the door. We didn't have the volume before because we've always just been at a slow pace at the beginning. I think during the our years in business, we gradually started getting more and more busier, and with the reopening, that kind of just caught us off guard. And we finally, in the last few weeks, actually hired a security company to help us out and making sure that we have everything under control and we have someone checking IDs and just to basically overall have better control of the restaurant and its capacity. But that's been actually fairly recently, and we're very, very happy with the service, just because it's helped us to kind of just take care of the restaurant and the patrons.
I would also like to add in, there were some concerns about like social distancing because of the variant, et cetera. I would like to make everyone aware that when the concerns of the COVID-19 variant transpired, we were actually one of the first restaurants to close our doors and basically just pivot to curbside and pickup. Was definitely not an easy call, and I don't believe it was actually mandated at that time, but because of the concerns of our own staff who has been with us for well over 6 years through different restaurants that we've owned, out of concern for their safety, out of concern for the safety of the community, which is mainly who we service, we did close the doors to our restaurant. And they were closed for several months, and we just survived basically based off the curbside pickup. And the only reason we did that was to keep our staff employed. And then we were finally able to open our doors to outdoor patio dining sometime, I want to say May or June. Can't recall now. It seems like it's been several years. So we, pivoted to that, and then eventually, when the state and county and city mandates said we could start to operate limited indoors, we did. So there has been a constant pivot throughout the beginning of 2020. We're constantly making modifications and assessing the situations. I'm not sure if everyone is aware, but there's been an influx of activity just all over downtown, and I think that that's just representative of the fact that we were all pretty caged for a while, right? So the activity outdoors, even just in front of the restaurant, has been difficult to control. As we, my husband and staff have attended several meetings with the local PD department to better just try to understand and to also help them, like, how do we as a business who does operate late help you, do your job and keep our community safe? So we attend those meetings regularly. Our security staff and our indoor staff have pretty good communication with our police department, and we're constantly pivoting and shuffling. How do we limit the activity going on indoors and just in the downtown area? Basically the nightlife, right? So yes, it's a trickling effect from all the nearby bars and restaurants, but we have been, I think, pretty compliant throughout the entire pandemic. And rest assured, if they told us, the state or city or county told us, hey, we need to limit indoor activity again, we definitely would, because we did the first time. So that should not be a concern.
Yes, I want to thank the applicant for being forthwith and direct. Sometimes we have to ask questions, do our due diligence. And I would like to separate the social media from the reality.
Thank you for calling.
My main question to you is, so you have been in compliance with the EPC laws. You've been in compliance with county public health mandate for restaurants.
Correct.
Just say so for record. So
Yes,
Correct.
correct.
Yes.
And in your own operation plan, you have updated yourself to all the latest public health issuance and try to comply with that.
Yes, yes, we
Correct.
have.
So you're acting in a responsible manner.
Correct. Yeah. In fact, I would say 98% of our staff is fully vaccinated.
And in an area where you've been besieged by a lot of partiers recently, since the mandate, I don't think you're responsible for it, but I think the setting of the downtown area is just people were pent up and going, wanted to get out. So, but I do encourage you to be as careful as you can. I know it's hard because people get belligerent when you try to be responsible. And good luck to you. I mean, we'd like to have good establishment owners in the area that act in a responsible way. But we also have a young crowd city that needs recreation activity. Did I put that nicely?
Very well said.
Yeah.
I'd like to add, I was born and raised in Santa Ana. I love the city. It's not just a place where I make money in a restaurant and a business with what's at our disposal. I love the city so much. I am very conscious of the previous outlook people had about Santa Ana. I would constantly be debating people as to why the city is so great and why they misunderstood it. And for me to have an establishment in downtown Santa Ana, I'm very, very proud of that. And I would not ever like to put the city that I love, that I was born and raised in bad light. So with that consideration.
And also to put in context, this last weekend was the first art walk, the first public demonstration of the Chicano month, and a lot of social media promotion to come downtown to make that successful. Maybe it was a little successful. So how were you able to manage that yourself from an owner perspective? I'm just curious person.
it's with the pandemic, and this has been unfortunate to say, but what I've seen and heard from other neighboring bars and business owners, a lot of the activity of just bad things that occur, incidences. We've been having a lot of outsiders coming from different counties, different cities. We know our regulars, we know the people that we serve on a first name basis. And what we've noticed is that people from LA County, from the Inland Empire are coming just because there's a little bit more closures, a little bit more restrictive counties. And it's been noticeable whenever there's been issues and stuff, we, right away recognize that. So that has actually, allowed us to be a little bit more vigilant, keep an eye on just people that we don't recognize as regulars, and just to make sure that, they abide by the rules just like everyone else, just like the regulars do. But we just are very, very communicative. Our staff has a chat if there's anything going on. We have walkie-talkies from the bartenders to the bussers to the security. So we just always try to be very, very communicative, and make sure everyone has their, eyes and ears open, and making sure that, we can control the oncoming people.
I think my husband had already touched on it, but because of the influx of people from other counties and just the overall activity in downtown, we did recently, about a month and a half ago, not only decide to obviously keep the current security staff that we had since we've opened the establishment, but we also added additional outsourced security that has from a very reputable company that has a lot of experience. So yeah, we've actually only tried to make the place even more secure for everyone.
I guess my other comment on the matter is, currently, are you proposing to serve spirits outside your establishment till 2 o'clock in the morning? Is that correct?
Are you referring to the parklet? Patio, we give the same service from the inside and outdoor patio. The parklet, at a certain time, we close it, just because we just don't want a lot of activity out in the front of our establishment. Sometimes patrons leave and they'll hang out there. So for that reason, we come to close it earlier, but distilled spirits will be served in the patio, in the enclosed patio.
Yeah, that's part of our business. The parklet is almost like leased by the city at this time.
And I assume have the procedures and how to handle guests coming out to control that you are in your space can.
Yes.
Yeah, it's actually part of the CUP with our type 41 license right now. Yeah.
So I'm just curious if you were able to kind of answer Commissioner Caldwell's concern that previously there seems to be, I haven't seen it myself, but I am concerned that there are a large amount of patrons in your establishment beyond what's stated in the application. How you remedy that issue if it occurs again?
Again, since, as my wife mentioned, we had a smaller security team before. Just recently, we acquired this company, and basically we have people in different posts and in more just available locations to where they could pretty much we could communicate with each other and making sure that the place is not over capacity.
We do take certain procedures at a certain time, right, where we actually do remove some of the seating area, just like any neighboring bar and restaurant does as well. At any given point in time, there is lines at the door. We just, at some point, we actually do not let people in anymore, right, because we're actually now having to just basically monitor the traffic, right, and so then it just kind of becomes like a babysitting game at some point, versus hey, we can let more people in, right? So we've been doing this for 8 years now, and I kind of know when to cut our losses at this point.
Let's say comments from the public. Let's say we have members of the public that want to comment.
There is anyone that is participating via Zoom that would like to comment on this item, please either select the hand icon or if you're calling in, please dial *9 now. We'll wait a few seconds. We do not have any callers, nor do we have any requests to speak for us.
Thank you. Seeing that we do not have any comments, the public hearing is now closed. Does the commission have any final questions for staff?
Yes. Thank you. I just wanted to thank staff for raising the social media presence and for Commissioner Ramos raising it. You know, we often get fooled or can get fooled by it. I've owned restaurants for probably 25 years now. Many of them through my in-laws, we've had to deal with liquor licenses, not in Santa Ana, but in Corona and Riverside area. And so I know it's difficult to run a business, particularly right now where most of the sales are coming from liquor. But we as commissioners have to ask these questions. It's our duty and obligation to ask questions like these. So please don't feel offended. And I would say, you know, good luck to you. This is a tough time to make it, and we're like in the 3rd week now, and so 4th, depending on who you ask. So I just wanted to wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the comments. I'll just like to add that the request to upgrade our alcohol license is not so that we can change any business operation or practice that we currently have. It really is to control cost because we can purchase it more inexpensive, right? At better wholesale prices, which is something we desperately need at this time.
Yeah, and to stay competitive too, just because most neighboring places have type 47, and it's hard to explain sometimes to patrons when they come and they show up and they said, let me get, and they start calling for their favorite brand. They're like, we just have the house tequila, which is really our agave wine. And it's just, people get off put by that. And like, I've had customers that leave, they just said, oh, they don't have my favorite tequila or whiskey. But it's also to stay competitive and to be hopefully, you know, look for the long haul and bring revenue to the city and just help out our part.
But understood, the tough questions need to be answered.
Oh, absolutely.
But I appreciate Commissioner Wu for calling in here today.
Yeah, I have no questions. Again, I just want to echo what Commissioner Alvarez mentioned. Nothing personal, it's just observations that I've seen. You know, I mentioned it earlier on. I love the establishment. The music that you guys have is amazing, but at the same time, it is ridiculous impact. You know, so it's just being mindful of that. You know, training staff and just creating a line. You know, other neighboring businesses do it. So that's just a practice that I would recommend. Obviously, you guys are the experts. You know, you own the restaurant, but I want you guys to succeed. That's it. You know, and I'm just noticing things that I observed. I wasn't too happy with this last experience that I had. I left, and it wasn't because they didn't have the alcohol you guys that you had. It's just you know, it was just packed. Like I said, it was humid. It was really nice. That's all I had to say. And it's just hopefully this, you know, comes to light and we can improve. That's all I got to say.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ramos.
I have no additional questions. I just once again want to thank the applicants for addressing the questions that I had asked very directly. And as a business that actively uses their social media, I think you all understand how important it is. And I appreciate the way that you all responded. And I also invite other commissioners to use social media to see what applicants are doing before they come to us so that we can ask these questions and hear directly from them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wu. I don't have any. Commissioner Ramos.
I just want to say good luck with the whole situation. You know, it's tough, as everybody said here, it's a tough business to be in at this point. stuff-based business meeting anytime, but during this set of conditions, it's even tougher, so. Good luck with it and make it work.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to approve this matter?
I move.
I'll second.
Thank you. Secretary, for roll.
Yes, I have a motion by Commissioner Wu and a second by Commissioner Calderon. So go ahead with the roll call. Commissioner Alderete.
Yes.
Commissioner Calderon.
Aye.
Commissioner McLaughlin.
Aye.
Commissioner Ramos.
Aye.
Commissioner Wu
Aye.
and Vice Chair Pham.
Aye.
Motion passes by a majority vote with Chair Morris abstaining.
A point of order, did we close the public hearing before the vote?
Yes.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, Madam Secretary, are we on administrative matters?
Yes, we are.
Thank you. So now moving on to administrative matters. Election of the officer to the Historic Resources Commission. Before we begin, is there a member of the public that would like to comment on this item?
We do not have any requests to speak forms, but if there is someone that would like to comment on this item, who's participating via Zoom, please press *9 now or select the hand icon. We do not have any speakers.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We will now take nominations for representative to the Historic Resources Commission for the 2021-2022 term.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to nominate Mark as his current representative. As I know, it's been on there for a while, so I'd like to nominate Mark.
Thank you. We have a second. Second. Do we have any other nominations? Hearing none. I'd like to close the nominations and Madam Secretary, please call for a roll call vote.
Yes, roll call vote to nominate Commissioner McLaughlin to the Historic Resources Commission. Commissioner Alderete.
Yes.
Commissioner Calderon.
Aye.
Commissioner McLaughlin.
Aye.
Commissioner Ramos.
Aye.
Commissioner Wu.
Aye.
Vice Chair Pham.
Aye.
Chair Morrissey.
Aye.
Motion passes by unanimous consent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
The new representative is Mark McLaughlin. And the next Historic Resources Commission meeting will be on Thursday, September 2nd. Congratulations to Mr. McLaughlin. And that concludes the business calendar. And we'll be moving on to the work study calendar. Please note, no action will be taken on this item. Before we begin, is there a member of the public who would like to comment on this item?
If you would like to comment on the work study session, please come up to the podium now. We do have one request to speak form that was submitted. And if you are participating via Zoom, please either select the hand icon or *9 now. Thank you. You'll have 3 minutes, and we'll go ahead and let you in your time.
Okay, thank you.
Congratulations, Commissioner McLaughlin. Good evening, Chair and Planning Commissioners. My name is Rich Gomez, and my comments are on behalf of the Southwest Regional Council of Carpenters, representing hundreds of hardworking men and women and their family members who reside in Santa Ana. As the city continues to review and discuss the proposed draft general plan update, we hope the city recognizes that this long-term blueprint should also include opportunities for construction workers who will be responsible for building the city's future housing needs. Workers who belong to a state-certified apprenticeship program and who earn a livable wage and are provided benefits for the carpenter and their immediate family members. This plan should not only seek to change its land uses, but also to create a more equitable society where construction workers can also work, play, and live in the city where they grew up in, without the fear of being exploited by unscrupulous contractors, also known as bad actors. A new UC Berkeley study titled "The Public Cost of Low-Wage Jobs in California Construction Industry" has noted that a significant number of construction workers are vulnerable to wage theft, misclassification, and incomplete access to health care benefits. As a result, many construction workers and their families are forced to become enrolled in government safety net programs to meet their basic needs, like medical coverage and food stamps. This downward cycle is threatening the construction industry and resulting in a worker shortage in California. As a general plan update moves forward, we hope that the Planning Commission looks at the possibility of implementing a skilled and trained workforce program with local hire components. A program such as this will not only ensure that the residents living in Santa Ana have the opportunity to work in the city with a livable wage, but also providing them with a pathway to pursue a professional career as a carpenter, tradesman, or woman. This will also help the state meet its current climate action goals by reducing the vehicle miles traveled and traffic in the city. Let's start building community wealth in the city of Santa Ana with jobs, wages, and benefits. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. Have a good evening.
Do you have any other comments from the public?
We do not have any other requests to speak forms, and we did not have anyone raise their hand or dial *9. So that concludes public comments for this item.
We'll close the public hearing. We'll invite staff to make their presentation on the Santa Ana General Plan and Program Environmental Impact Report Update.
Good evening, commissioners. My first time in a bubble, like a Coke or something. No. Anyways, thank you for having us tonight, and we look forward to giving you, some of you, a new foundation for the general plan update, and for others that were here a year ago, reflected on what the general plan update includes. So tonight we're going to try and touch on some basic things. Again, just the purpose and what the general plan elements are. We'll walk through those in a broad fashion. Then we'll touch on the community engagement that's gone on for the last 5 years or so, and also the environmental justice component that the commission asked us to go back and invest a little bit more time in this past year. We'll also touch on some of the fundamental new directions that's highlighted in the elements, and then spend a little time tonight, just a little time tonight, on the land use plan and the focus areas. And then we'll touch on the recirculated environmental impact report process, and then the next steps. So one thing I'd like to highlight is that tonight is the beginning, and so throughout the evening, if there are some topics that you think you'd like to have more information on, or areas you'd like us to emphasize when we come back to our next study session, it's a good opportunity to share that. So as most of you know, the general plan is a great opportunity for us to refresh our guide for the future of Santa Ana, not only its physical development, but overall quality of life in our community, economic health, and to sustain us for the future. The beautiful, colorful pictures you see are our 11 elements, and I would assume most of you would have gotten an email that publicized that the general plan and the recirculated EIR are now available online for review. And the 5 words at the bottom, you might recognize those are the guiding values or principles that are in each of the elements. And those were part of the process of the public engagement. Those were the themes that came up consistently. And so those became our values. And as you can see, culture, sustainability, health, education, and equity, they actually complement the whole environmental justice philosophy as well. So these next few slides, I'm just going to give the essence of each of the elements. So the elements are grouped into 3 different volumes, if you will. The first section is what we call service and infrastructure. And the first one is the community element. The community element is new for us, and it actually incorporates some of the policies and programs of our prior education element. And it's intended to capture the culture, education, and quality of life and the programmatic things that kind of make our community. The next element, it used to be called the circulation element, not mobility element. And where there's a little green star, that means that that's one of the required elements the state requires cities to have. So they feel like it's a fundamental thing that all cities need to plan for. So in our mobility element, at long last, we'll be putting in the complete streets philosophies, which we're starting to implement, but now it'll be officially in our general plan. It'll also include the Orange County streetcar as part of our formal policy, and look for ways to be advanced in multimodal and opportunities for multiple options for transportation. So again, under service and infrastructure, we have our economic prosperity element, and you can imagine by its title, it's about looking for job diversity, enhancing job opportunities, looking for the long-term health, financial health of our community, so we can provide services to the public and have a quality community. The next element being our public services element. And that's, as you can imagine, it deals with utilities, infrastructure, and all those sorts of public facility basic things that, that are needed for a community to sustain itself and serve the community. So the next general category or volume is relates to the natural environment. So both of these elements are again required by state law. The first one, the conservation element, looks at our natural resources, and Santa Ana doesn't have as many natural resources as other communities, but we do have some natural resources that we want to preserve, Santiago Park being one example. And conservation looks at acknowledging any type of open space we have in our community and the biological environment, and trying to preserve that, enhance that, to again promote quality of life and health in our community. The open space element is kind of an overlap with the conservation element, and it not just natural resources, it looks at all sorts of open space, and also overlaps with our recreation opportunities for our community. And again, it touches on wildlife conservation. There's an overlap, if you will, for conservation and open space. And with us in Santa Ana, parkland and that sort of thing is also a key component of our open space element. So still in the natural environment, we have the noise element required, and its intention is to mitigate and improve noise impacts, and particularly for new development, make sure we're being mindful of standards and placement and considerations for minimizing noise. The safety element deals with all sorts of hazard issues, be it floods, earthquake, and miscellaneous types of hazards. We look at what might be impactful or of risk to the community, and we evaluate that and plan with different actions and policies to keep our community safe in a proactive fashion. All right, so we're now to the next category, the built environment. So the first one on the list for that is our historic preservation element. So for those that aren't familiar, this is a first where we've elevated historic preservation to having its own element. So we're excited about that. And so it identifies policies and programs that acknowledge our cultural, archaeological, architectural assets in the community and ways to preserve it, enhance it, and grow our preservation program. The next category is our land use element. Land use element, we saved it for last, is our urban design element. And that's a little softer, if you will, but the urban design element sort of is what is intended to weave the aesthetics and going through the city of Santa Ana being an aesthetically pleasing experience, architecturally in our public realm, preserving our visual assets, and it's very much a complement to our land use element, which we'll talk about in just a moment. So the land use element is required, and it's the one that I think Planning Commission hears about and sees the most with new development, because it identifies where certain development can be placed, what's in its intensity or density, and what's the characteristic, the character of it that we're looking for in different parts of the community. And again, our goal is to look for sustainability in how we are moving forward to place new growth. So now I'm going to walk you through the organization of the document. So as you hopefully start to look at the document, we won't be presenting it formally for you for a few months, but you have the opportunity to look at it online. And so each element, of course, has a table of contents. And the first thing you'll see in each element is a page on community considerations. So it's the highlights of what we heard from the community on that particular topic and what we considered as we move forward on goals and policies. And those goals and policies are what we call the policy framework. We'll see that in a moment. Then each of the elements has implementation actions to make those actualize those goals. And then those figures and tables to complement the subject. And then each of the table of contents at the bottom has related items for reference that you can go for additional information. So just wanted to highlight that when you look at our element, it's different than a lot of others that you see. There was a conscious decision when it was first drafted a few years ago to make it simple, user-friendly, very visual. And as you can see, there's some really dynamic pictures in the different elements. So each element, this being the land use element, has a brief description of the essence of that element to give the viewer and the reader some basics. And then it moves right into the policy framework, the meat. So I'll just touch on, so in blue, that would be the goal in this case, complete communities. And then it's followed by a number of policies. The icons you see here are all of our values. And so we went through the effort to cross-reference each of our policies and show how it connected to our values. So you can see just by a quick color coding, you can see how that works. And then I'll just draw attention to the icon on the right, the pink one, fuchsia with a little green EJ on it. We went back and then affirmed of those which ones correspond to environmental justice and help support being a champion of environmental justice. So again, the next part of it is the implementation plan, and the way that it's organized, the dark band you see lists the goal. And then underneath it, it lists a variety of implementation actions to achieve that goal. And on the right, it identifies the agency of the city that is the lead in achieving that action, and also a time frame for its completion, the targeted time frame for its completion. And for, just as a quick aside, the city now is, even though it's a charter city, we are required to do an annual progress report on our general plan. So we will be looking at, if it gets adopted, we will be looking at these implementation actions and then reporting out once a year on our progress on these different policies and actions. So I'm going to go quickly through the last few years that some of us, let me stop to pause for a moment. I want to take a moment to introduce one of our general plan team members that's been key and has been with those of us in this journey since 2015. Ricardo Soto, if you could give a hello wave. Senior planner Ricardo Soto has been instrumental in the effort. So back in 2015, when we kicked off the effort at the end of the year, we started with some community meetings, and we continued those on through January and March of 2016. We also did some focused youth outreach, which we continue to be mindful of the youth and their important presence in these kinds of forward-thinking documents. In 2017, pretty much the whole year was working with the General Plan Advisory Group, which was a group of 15, 17 individuals. There was a commissioner, a planning commission, there was a Parks and Rec board member, someone from Community Development's commission, and a variety of community organizations, nonprofits, housing folks, just a whole variety of folks. And they met once or twice a month, and we went through each of the different elements in the draft policy, and they also helped with the values, affirming the values, the vision statement, and land use plan as well. So that was an investment of a lot of folks' time and effort. So then in 2018, we moved forward and we had some study sessions, we had some pop-up events to continue to get community feedback. And then we drafted the policy framework at the end of the year. So again, the goals and policies, we got that framework accomplished. And then in 2019, we took it the next step where we had some land use alternatives in 5 different focus areas. And we took that out to the community. We did an online survey to get feedback. We went out to the geographic 5 focus areas and interacted with the community, got additional feedback, and then continued on the journey to 2020. In 2020, we initiated an environmental impact report scoping, and we had 2 more, again, it's 2020. So pause for reflection on 2020. And so life was a little different. We went for 2 virtual community workshops, and then we came to the commission in November of last year. And as those of you might know or remember, at that time, there was a fair amount of the community that was asking for more time. They were concerned that because of COVID, et cetera, there wasn't enough outreach, particularly with our environmental justice communities that are disadvantaged. And so commission at that time directed staff, they didn't take action, and they directed staff to go back and do some additional work with community justice. So we got started on that after the holidays, and we actually met with some active environmental justice advocates, if you will. So folks from the Madison Green Organization, Orange County Environmental Justice, a variety of folks, Kennedy Commission, they all helped us to actually vet our outreach concepts to go the next level. And so we really appreciated their input in that. And with that, we moved forward with an environmental justice survey and virtual forums. So we enacted that March through May, and from there we went back and made some adjustments to the general plan, and basically we're here before you to move on in the journey and walk you through a few more parts of things. So there you have that. So I'll just touch on this for a moment. This was created again through the community. The General Plan Advisory Committee helped define it. I just want to take the time to read it. So this is essentially what came together as the vision, overriding vision for our general plan. But Santa Ana is a community that promotes the health and wellness of all residents. It has a civic culture that actively embraces the power of diversity. Our city invests in resources that create economic opportunities for the next generation. And it is a community that celebrates our past while working together to create a sustainable future. So that is what capsulated what everyone felt was should be our vision through 2045. So with that, I'm going to touch on the environmental justice component that, again, we went back and worked with those environmental justice communities. So the areas in pink are our environmental justice or disadvantaged communities. So those are the communities that through the Air Resources Board has a tool that helps to define environmental conditions and socioeconomic conditions over a certain threshold that are then considered disadvantaged. And why some of them are surrounded in yellow is that a few months back, they updated their model, and so we needed to update it as well. I wanted to acknowledge that. And the hatched area is one census tract. These are all based on census tracts that fell out. So SB 1000 is what requires cities, when they update more than a couple of general plan elements, needs to engage in environmental justice in their element. And so first we have to identify our areas, which are in pink. And SB 1000 talks in terms of cities are then to incorporate policies that mindfully reduce environmental health in these adverse folks that are adversely impacted in these pink areas. And then to go the next step to develop policies that prioritize improvements and projects in these areas. And then also to make sure we are working as hard as we can collaboratively to include the EJ communities in the decision-making process. So to help with that last point of engaging in process, as I mentioned earlier, we held 10 virtual community forums, and they were targeted at the environmental justice areas. So we grouped neighborhoods together, and we did a whole lot of different outreach, but we worked with neighborhood leaders, we did yard signs, we actually mailed out to all of the owners and the residents in those areas. So we really covered as much ground as we could. And again, those areas include about 30 established neighborhoods or 23 census tracts. The little visual you see is the notice for the virtual meetings, but we also did a multi-trilingual environmental justice survey that was also marketed to have folks be engaged. And we, you might have heard as well that we encourage folks with, if they filled out the survey, they could be involved in a $100 raffle. So that was fun to be able to provide that incentive for folks. And then at the end of the day, you do have a hard copy of a brief environmental justice outreach summary that gives some of the basics on what we heard and some more detail. I'll just offer that one of the questions that asked what is one of the most important categories for quality of life in a community, and the answer was parks and open space. So with that, this is just one example because all of the elements have actions and there's a lot in there, but I wanted to take the opportunity to give you some examples of environmental justice actions that are in the draft element, and some of these which have been refined and strengthened in our last few months of working with the community and some of the environmental justice folks. So bear with me for a moment. I'm just going to read a couple of them. In the land use element, it says standards, evaluate buffer requirements between polluting industrial uses and sensitive uses like residents and schools. So that would be something that we would evaluate and update our zoning code to do that in a concrete fashion. The next one, promote health, partner with local organizations, be it the Orange County Healthcare Agency, the Orange County Environmental Justice, CCI, partners to look at increasing the blood level testing for the community and educational awareness of why that's important, and also the follow-up of soil remediation. So that was an important part. The next one is engaged EJ prevention and health, but this actually touches in on outreach. So we evolved to where the advocates ask that we hold a biannual or quarterly roundtable with the local stakeholders and kind of evaluate specifically what are we doing on our environmental justice policies and actions. So that particular statement is in as a commitment for the city as well, to, or at least is offered for the city, yourself and council to consider. And then under the community element, to bring it to light is one is about collaboration and as we were going through the whole EJ outreach, it just reaffirms that the collaboration that we've built with environmental justice constituents and the community is critical. And so this highlights that to be strategic in our partnerships to improve health outcomes, leverage our resources to promote health, equity, and sustainability. And then the last but not least is to actually work with the OC Healthcare Agency and others to identify and then monitor health indicators. So we can actually measure in different areas, be it lead or quality, and measure the success of our general plan policies. So those are potential actions, just as example. I'm going to pull back a little bigger picture now. This slide talks somewhat about the changes, overall changes in all the elements. So essentially, from the feedback we got from the public over time, the new topics that were more emphasized in these elements are health and wellness, environmental justice, that we just spoke of, a little more emphasis on climate adaptation, leaning into that a little bit more, and then of course, historic preservation a little bit more front and center. And then over to the right, having greater emphasis on community empowerment, particularly EJ areas, or those that aren't typically engaged, looking at alternative transportation, equity and distribution of parks and recreation, sustainable development. And then the last one left is our land use focus areas, which we'll walk through in just a moment. And the idea was to look more for active urban places, identify some corridor residential, which was a new designation, and then look at what we're calling industrial flex with some clean, creative industrial designations. So this is kind of a transition slide, if you will. Just wanted to take a moment to say, how did we come about with the land use plan, those 5 focus areas? And so 4 bullet points related to that is that, we did a community outreach, we had the survey, we got feedback. In addition, we had the general plan advisory group, which actually was broken up into groups and identified bubble diagrams. Where do you think the opportunity areas are for growth, change, et cetera, in Santa Ana? And we overlaid all that where the commonalities were, and that was kind of a base for our land use focus area. We also had a variety of different points, city council feedback and guidance on some of these focus areas. And then again, these focus areas help to connect to our core values about sustainability and also the regional goals of things like, as mentioned by the one speaker, achieving greenhouse gas, dealing with climate change, having housing and transportation that are better connected. And so that was all what was part of working together on these focus areas. So this particular graphic reinforces 2 things. The areas in blue are our existing plans. So they would be things that you might have heard of: the harbor specific plan, main place specific plan, transit zoning code area. Those are plans that are in place and still have growth potential within them. Then the areas in the fuchsia pink are our new focus areas. And you can see there's South Main, Grand and 17th, West Santa Ana Boulevard along with Fixed Skyway, G5 and Dyer, and South Main. And you can see if you look at them all together, they start to connect to each other. So there's kind of linkages from one area to the other, potential linkages. So I'm going to go through the focus areas somewhat briefly. There's a lot of detail here, but I'm just going to be at a kind of high level on it. So those that aren't familiar, one of the areas, South Main Street, is an area that was identified with some land use changes that it could complement what's already going on at the South Main vision plan and improvements. and stimulate some development, activate the streetscape even more, and allow for a little more intense multi-story frontage along Main Street, and then support more pedestrian and transit use along there. So I'm going to walk you through this little slice of our land use map that's proposed. And the area to draw your attention to for beginning would be the light purple pink color, the urban neighborhood. So right now, most of that area is designated just for commercial. And this urban neighborhood category allows it the opportunity to have housing and mixed use. That could be single family, multifamily, mixed use, retail on the first floor. But the column on the right gives you a sense of the scale that we're looking at. It would allow for 20 dwelling units per acre, but no more than 3 stories. And the zoning that would complement this would then refine that further, but max would be 3 stories. So as you can see, that allows for the preservation of historic structures there. It allows for infill, but essentially it allows for a dynamic and reviving and refreshing South Main. The other one to draw your attention to is the bottom of that corridor. It's sort of purpley, periwinkle blue, we'll call it. And that's an area that's commercial now, but has industrial uses in there. And it's a new designation that we're calling it industrial flex. And it's for office, industrial, small scale, but it's clean manufacturing. A variety of light manufacturing uses that are allowed now in town would not be allowed there. They would all be clean, and it would allow for some creative spaces. So that would be that. So the areas in yellow on either side, that's not being planned to be changed. It's really these 2 areas I wanted to draw your attention to. All right, so moving on to 17th and Grand. Those of you might be familiar with 17th and Grand, particularly the northwest corner. It's a pretty underutilized older commercial center that was seen as an opportunity to create a mixed-use corridor along Grand and 17th, primarily Grand. And again, a little more intense, multi-story along the front. These are some images that are potential images that could be to transform the area into. One of the things that was noted in the 4th bullet down is that this area was seen as a really great opportunity to foster community spaces, neighborhood serving amenities. You might say it's like the City Place is one example where that is really a benefit for the residents in that surrounding area, and that's an opportunity here as well for 17th and Grand, not to necessarily be a regional or a commercial draw, but to be a really nice place for the local community. And then again, there's another area for industrial flex, that allows for that small scale manufacturing, maybe some artist spaces, a little bit of live work, as well as maintaining some commercial, which is in red here. So this shows you the area from basically the 22 or northern boundary all the way down to the blue line is the freeway, 5 freeway, and then it takes you down to First Street. So the areas in the light purple are, again, urban neighborhood, which we spoke of earlier, allows for kind of a medium density urban neighborhood. Again, there's some multifamily that's already in there. So this would just allow for complementary uses or change over the long term, but it would allow in some areas for 20 dwelling units per acre, 3 stories, in a few other areas, 30 dwelling units, 4 stories, and then closer to the major arterial connection, 17th and Grand proper, it would allow for 40 dwelling units per acre and 5 stories, which kind of reflects some of the visuals you saw in the image prior. And again, there's a little patch of industrial flex, which is just east of Penn Way, south of 17th, which would allow that area, encourage that area to convert to clean industrial creative space. And then south of the 5 freeway, you have a district center, and that would be a designation that would It somewhat complements and continues the transit zoning code area and next to the train station, and allows a higher intensity of up to 90 dwelling units per acre or 6 stories. Okay, so 3 more to go. So this one is the West Santa Ana Boulevard. This one is along the streetcar. Again, more opportunity for mixed, multiple story, mixed use, infill, but being very respectful of the established neighborhoods and taking the opportunity to better buffer industrial uses and the residential neighborhood, which is has been a concern in that area. And then again, more creative industrial maker type spaces, we're calling it. So I'll go through, there's a lot of detail in this particular one, but I'll just touch on that these areas that are in the purple, they're at transit stops. So at the transit stops is where there'd be the urban neighborhood, allow for a little more dynamics, a little urban neighborhood here, another transit stop for that 20 dwelling units per acre. And then as we get further east, 30 dwelling units per acre at this particular intersection and 30 over here. And then this area here that's now traditional industrial, this would all be transitioned to industrial flex that would allow a little higher intensity, but it would be a transition to clean. And then these areas that are a bit orange, they would be 15 dwelling units per acre. There's a lot of different designations on this particular stretch, and this tells the rest of the story with, again, as I mentioned, the industrial flex would allow for 3 stories in these areas. So I appreciate there's a lot to absorb, but we're trying to give you at least a warm up and kind of a foundation. So actually two more. So this is the area of the 55 freeway in Dyer. So this area does have some mixed use in it now. It's got the Heritage and Bower project in that area, but there's an opportunity to provide additional housing on the city's edge of, along the 5 freeway, the 55. And one opportunity was that area has such high presence on the freeway that it has an opportunity to be kind of an economic opportunity for potential industrial or office employment. So that was part of the conversation here. And so from a land use map standpoint, what you see is this dark purple area is the area that would allow for kind of a continuation of the Heritage and Bowery, where you'd allow for mixed use and some residential at 90 dwelling units per acre, maximum 6 stories. And then this area here in the front would be the industrial flex. It'd go up to 10 stories. The images you saw in the prior slide show it as like corporate centers, going along the 55, all that, that visibility was seen as an opportunity for the city to lean into that and allow that opportunity to come forward. So, and then this area in red would be maintained in commercial at this point. All right, the last focus area. So this one's pretty dynamic. To capitalize on the proximity to South Coast Metro, the idea was to introduce some higher intensity, the highest, to be an urban village, an area that can be walkable, make sure that that public realm is well improved, and again, being mindful of the proper standards to protect the integrity of the lower density neighborhoods on either side. So this is a stretch of area from Warner to the north, all the way to Sunflower. Let's start with the lower intensity. This area here, it's mostly commercial, well, it's commercial now, would be transitioned to urban neighborhood, again, allowing the opportunity for residential. That area would be limited to 3 stories. There is some single family and residential on either side, so that's more of a transition. And then you get down here from Alton to MacArthur. This is proposed to be designated at 90 dwelling units per acre, which is our kind of more typical for our district center designation. But this would allow a maximum up to 10 stories. And then as you get closer to Sunflower and South Coast Metro, that's where it would allow going up as high as 25 stories and an intensity of 125 units per acre, at least in theory. So again, it's the dynamic of allowing this to be some of what you see over in Costa Mesa. It's dynamic, quality architecture, and an urban center. So this slide takes you to the numbers. So we were, of all the things we were just looking at, I'm going to take you down to the green area here. These are the focus areas. And when you translate the estimated build out for all of those areas we were just speaking of, it translates to about 17,000 potential new housing units and a little bit over 6,000 new jobs based on the non-residential development growth. And then the area in yellow, just for perspective as well, is still the potential growth that's left in our existing plans, harbor specific plan, transit zone code, et cetera. But as it relates to the focus areas we just spoke of that are identified here, that would be, this is the growth that we're talking about. And this is the growth that was evaluated in the environmental impact report. And of course, those, along with the recirculated. So the next couple of slides, just going to talk about the environmental for background. So again, what we just talked about was part of the draft environmental impact report that EIR evaluated and reviewed 18 different topics. And in doing so, it identified 4 topic areas that had significant and unavoidable impacts. That's air quality, greenhouse gas, cultural resources, population housing, and the EIR also gave different alternatives to the focus areas we just described. So based on the community input and a variety of concerns, the decision was made to recirculate the environmental impact report. And what that means is that we're circulating only a few chapters of it. So the prior draft EIR is in place. And then these 3 chapters, recreation, air quality, and hazards, it's those 3 that are being reopened. And that's what is under review over the next 45 days. In addition, again, with community concern and kind of relooking at things, this recirculated identifies recreation as yet another significant impact. And so it was evaluated as such. And it includes another alternative that's aimed at mitigating the impacts that development would have on our open space and recreation in Santa Ana. So with all that, we come to our conclusion, which are the next steps. And as I mentioned, the general plan EIR is under public review from now until in September. And then we are looking forward to coming back to Planning Commission. And again, feel free to share with management, et cetera, what would be helpful in the next workshop. And then in addition to that, September 13th, we'll have a public hearing with the specific purpose of allowing the community to give feedback to you on the recirculated environmental document. And that's before that 45-day period closes. So it allows you to hear what they're saying and them to have an opportunity to come to you and speak on that. And then ultimately, we're working towards coming back for consideration of the adoption of the general plan October 25th, and then on to council in the end of November. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions or provide any additional feedback for you. Thanks for your patience. That's a lot to cover for you.
Thank you, Ms. McCann. Bring it back to the commission. We have any comments from commissioners?
Commissioner, I'm glad I took the workshop on the new state mandates. really helped me to see that you guys did it. And, because just generally looking at it and doing other general plan updates in the city, this has been unique in all the years that I spent with the city here. And judging from the community meetings and outreach that you held, both on environmental justice and with the neighborhood association, and on the online input and surveys, the local channel for providing input, and all the meetings that your neighborhood improvement did to and we to get people out of the meeting. Hopefully, this has been a inclusive process of getting things done. Now, getting back to my point, you laid out several new goals, a new area like West Santa Ana and South Bend and all that. And looking at past plan for Harper Boulevard and how long it's taken and when it's happened, I'm kind of trying to envision what it will look like in those neighborhoods. Well, one thing seems to be relative is that there is going to be increased density. There is going to, with that comes increased traffic and parking needs. You integrated retail in those areas, so you've got a place of destination for people. And none of these things are negative in itself, but when you compound all the different area, it does impact the neighborhoods, but in each of your element, you had a clause there about being respectful of the impact of neighborhood. My concern is that in older, tightly knit, dense neighborhoods like in Artesia, Logan, and all that, where low-income families are scattered. I don't know if these new development and the housing and affordability is going to provide relief. And what I see missing in the plan for a lack of wording, I think we need a barrio revitalization. Barrio was my generation word that is embraced by community organizing. It'll stay so forgiving as it doesn't need to do wording of people. But the reason I say revitalization and restoration is that those neighborhoods were gutted by transportation corridor freeways and trains and all those kinds of things, and it kind of eroded the life and vitality and cut it up. And it's not going to be restored without reinvestment, restoration, and those kinds of activity. And I don't know if the environmental justice and the historic preservation kind of thing, because I think that's a historic preservation because of the culture of the people who were the early settlers and people who built Orange County. You know, they lived in those houses there and grew their family, and those families have noble histories, great grandchildren and all that. So I'm thinking that we have to kind of look at ways to create some reinvestment. I know that when we had the neighborhood housing service, we were able to do that. We were able to fix up the houses. We were able to give rehabilitation loans and all that. We have all those elements, but without a overall conscious effort to say we want to revert back whenever we can to residential use versus, you know, compounding or just building higher density. But you know, I have to kind of also say that projects like La Placita, Cinco, and Casa Valencia have been also great projects for targeting very low income and chronically homeless. And although that doesn't mean harm, it does go in the direction of exceeding our goal. There's lots more to do. So I don't know if my message any use of it, you understand, it's not a criticism, but it's also, I'm just looking at some sensitivity. How do we balance these hierarchies where professionals will come, who have the income to have the latte and stuff. But at the same time, I don't know what relief we are going to do, because I know the other thing that's happening is the speculators, the exploiter, the flipper are operating our neighborhood and taking those out of the market. So, and that's a natural economic occurrence. but I have to say that as you met with the Artesia Florida Neighborhood Association on West Santa Ana, there was some rich discussion going on between the neighborhood and you, and you brought in a lot of information really on environmental justice. So that helped to educate them. So I want to thank you for that. Now, when I try to engage them in discussion about planning the future, they don't know how to ask those questions. They don't know how to shape the policy in that direction. You know, it's easy for me as a community developer and economic developer. Okay, what bank's going to give me, $6 billion to do this because this is not zone and there's a plan for it. But in terms of just regular working folks, I don't know what we're going to do to preserve that. And that's not a criticism saying that we're not. I think we've been sensitive to that.
Appreciate that. I think what you touch on is how will we be respectful of existing residents, and what are our actions to address displacement, to mitigate displacement. So
Because
those
Santa
are
Ana, Santa Anita on the west side of the Santa Ana, then you have Artesia, Florida, Logan, you have all the old neighborhoods that are also in all the study area and plan. And so I just don't know, and you heard speakers like Sam Romero talk about that. We need you to do something for us.
well, we'll definitely make note of your comment tonight.
Any other comments?
Okay, just questions. On the one big corridor which you talked about, it's the 55 Dyer Road, and you've got the one classification of 10 stories being possible in that area. I'm confused on that a little bit because that's also the same area that the Bowery is in. And the Bowery got knocked down, the airport commission didn't approve that particular situation with Bowery. And they're only a 5-story, right? 7? Okay, 7. They're a 7-story facility. They didn't get permission. Now we're showing a 10-story potential in that same area.
So the Airport Land Use Commission is not in favor of our plan, and the city council would have to do an override of ALUC's concerns,
Okay, so
similar to the Bowery.
my concern is still, it's consistent with what the airport is saying, that they won't allow it.
Right, they're concerned. Now they, and I would offer that their concern would be even more so with the residential component than the 10-story flex from a, but I guess if there's a crash, doesn't matter if you're in an office or in your home, it's the same sort of concern that they would have.
So it's a concern for air safety? Because of the height?
But it's in the
Yeah, I mean, they
And
turned,
noise.
the airport commission, I think I'm not sure if they turned it down. Ali, you probably noticed, but when it came to the heritage, there was an issue with the heritage and the airport commission. And that was the first project that was done there. And now we're looking at the second project, which is the Bowery. And that project was also turned down by the airport commission. So I'm just sitting there going, why would we, the airport commission is saying no twice. Why are we saying, oh, we're going to do it anyway?
Do you want to speak in terms of the heritage component or the Bowery?
You're essentially right in documenting the history of those actions. It just means that the city council would have to overrule the ALUC's findings and approve the projects by a supermajority of 5 to 7. But for the general plan update, correct me if I'm wrong, but this already went to ALUC previously
Right.
during the first iteration, correct?
Right, and they have gone on record saying they're not in support of it. And so actually, last November, it was queued up that if it had moved forward, then council would have had to do an override, as was done on here.
Okay.
So,
My second question has to do with just the housing numbers. Again, if I read this correctly, under specific plan and everything else, potential build out would be about 20,000 units. And then if we look at the focus areas, potential build out would be 22,
if
23.
we look, oh, yeah, so you're looking at the full build out, yeah. So,
I mean, the full build. Yeah.
right, so, yes, so that would be what's on the ground now, plus the growth, yes, does, I emphasize the growth part, but you're absolutely correct. The total build out with what's on the ground now and what could be in our existing areas would be 20,000, and our focus areas would be a total of almost 24,000.
I mean, if you look at it, it's probably 5 or 6 times what's there now.
Well, yeah, if you look at what's there now, in theory, is 30, that like for housing is a little over 6,000. And then what the growth is proposed is 17, so you're right.
Okay. So then my question comes down to, I mean, what's considered to be the duration of this general plan? Is it 10? or 15 years?
2045 is the,
25?
yeah, is the horizon for the build out.
And the rating numbers that we have currently is 10.
Oh, the RENA numbers we have now is close to 3,000.
No, but I mean, the rating numbers, is it the time period, the numbers that we have that we're working with, is 10 or is it less than that?
Do you mean the time frame we need to play out our accomplish is 8 years?
8 years.
8 years. Yeah.
So this is, okay.
So, and you bring up a good point. So this project does not include the housing element. The housing element for quite some time has been on a separate track. You know, with this being delayed, the tracks are now on the same path. But the housing element, we don't foresee needing to depend on this to reach arena numbers. As you can see, that yellow circle of the growth potential that still exists is 15,000. So our homework is to go through and identify those sites and show HCD that the sites for that 15,000 existing can cover our 3,000. So we don't anticipate needing to rely on this new general plan update to meet our next round of RENA numbers for the next 8 years.
But they would be following the subsequent.
Yeah, they would benefit us in the future.
Okay.
Yeah.
But not for this round.
Not for this round. And again, the RENA numbers, well, the RENA is its own special story, but Santa Ana's RENA numbers are a little bit smaller than some others because double-edged sword, we're a disadvantaged community. So we're one of the handful of cities in Orange County that have a lower RENA number, while others might have 14,000, or, you know, so what that's just for perspective. So next time we might not be so lucky.
Okay, I'm good.
Thank you. I just had a couple comments. A lot there to get excited about, obviously. I really like the urban neighborhoods on Main Street, they're nicely scaled, as well, with the South Bristol development, high density scaling there. That works really well. The thing we talked about earlier, Commissioner Rules brought up, is being respectful to our single family residences. And I just want to make sure we're doing that with the Grand Avenue development, showing 5-story maximum relevance there. I'm not sure what it is on the west side. East side is multi-story condominiums.
It's linkage, so there's the McDonald's, and then there are some duplex single families there on the west.
So as we continue forward, just we should make sure we're respectful and scale to that transition from 5 to. And then the thing I really liked was in our vision statement, creating a sustainable future. I think that's really being pushed to the forefront along with our housing, adequate housing, affordable housing, and the thing that I saw there that you mentioned was creating partnerships, strategic partnerships. And I think the thing we could do is maybe create outreach to businesses, maybe tap into some of the carbon offsets. There may be potential to bring some projects into Santa Ana to help create environmental cleanup, create new jobs, economic vitality, win-win for it. So maybe increase or strengthen that language for strategic partnerships and include some strategic public-private partnerships. That'll conclude my comments. Did you have some comments?
This one, I think, buy all these, corridors, it's very,
I think I was just pointing out that Commissioner Ramos has her hand up, but I imagine you want to finish your comments. Yeah.
I just say, I think it's very positive. I think kind of like set the tone of what we can see the future development of these corridors. My only question is, the harbor corridor, that I see there's a lot of development that has happened, but I also see there's a lot of vacant lots. And I'm wondering, with these visions that you're proposing, there's a lot of objective projects that we would like to see along the corridor, but it's difficult to attract developers, attract parties who are interested in kind of producing these projects, because I know the general plan facilitates a vision, but it does take interested parties to do so. I'm wondering, see there's been
You bring up an interesting point. For Inland Harbor as an example, we have these other focus areas. Will harbor those vacant areas that you speak of? Will they not be infilled? Because the interest is being put out there. So I think that's something for us maybe to think about on how we can try and influence these areas to be infilled, somehow incentivized, because if we don't do that, then they'll never be those village dynamic areas that we were hoping for. So that is, it's market driven, a little bit out of our control, but maybe we can give some more thought to how we could coordinate with economic development or something to help kind of help that.
The literature we have online for the book, like some objective rendering, and drawing like streetscape that we have, is very encouraging to look at it. But then the reality of Drive on the harbor is that there are some lots that have been developed and they look really nice with the multifamily and mixed use. But then I'm just curious, we're able to maintain this kind of projected development pace, because in your package you're seeing the harbor transit corridor is a project that is focused on other corridors. Like I said, I'm just wondering if this fast finishing up what we started.
We can go back and look at our market study as well to affirm what our market study said. But yeah, that is the challenge in that, we kind of want folks to invest in the areas we've identified for this vision. If they just go every which way, then it gets diluted. But we don't have a perfect answer, but we'll give it some thought and talk amongst ourselves, see what we can propose. Thank you.
Some more comments?
Chair, we
Oh,
have
sure, please.
Commissioner Ramos.
Commissioner Ramos, you have any comments?
Yes, thank you. First, I want to say thank you to staff for the presentation and congratulations on putting out the most recent draft on Friday. And when this comes back to us, I know there was a timeline that I believe showed this coming back to us on August 23rd for a work study session.
Correct.
I just want to ask staff as much as is possible if we can have the work study session earlier in the meeting. And if possible, we can have a light agenda that day and any other days that we consider the general plan. I know that members of the community advocates have been following the general plan very closely. So any meeting where we'll be discussing it, I would anticipate that there will likely be a lot of folks calling in. So just to ensure that the commission has enough time and also to ensure that members of the community are able to call in and get in quickly, as opposed to maybe having to wait until another agenda. I think that would be great. But those are all my comments for now, and I'll make additional comments when this comes back. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ramos. So we'll close that item and we'll move on. Oh, sorry.
A point of personal privilege, the public hearing on the general plan will be October 25th, which is the second meeting. I hope that we don't change that because the first meeting of the month, I'm going to be on an airplane at the same time. It got changed. I originally planned to fly back into LA from doing some business, but the airline, because of all the chaos, changed the evening flight. So
We're pretty confident, we're very confident it will be October 25th, no sooner.
because I would just miss it. A lot of good work.
Very good.
We'll move on to general comments. Are there any staff member comments? We'll move on to commissioner comments. Do you have any general comments from commission members? I'd just like to say thank you to Melanie for the presentation. It's very nice presentation. Congratulations to Mr. Kaufman. The election to
Thank you.
Resources Commission.
Appreciate that. Thank you. And Melanie, that was a good, well put together presentation. I mean, it's practically, it looks very well, very professional.
So with that, we'll adjourn to our next meeting on Monday, August 23rd, at 5:30 p.m.